Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to break down a pretty provocative argument from political commentator Victor Davis Hanson. He's predicting that a major catastrophe is on the horizon, one he believes is going to completely fracture the Democratic Party and really reshape American politics for decades.
So this is really where Hanson's whole argument kicks off. In his eyes, the political turmoil we're seeing right now isn't just another bumpy ride. He sees it as a deep tremor, a warning sign that something genuinely dangerous is approaching.
And this right here, this is the absolute core of his thesis. According to Hanson, this isn't about small disagreements or fighting over policy details. No, he's talking about a catastrophe, a fundamental, deep break that he thinks could permanently change the party's entire identity.
So, to get our heads around this, we're going to walk through the evidence he lays out. We'll start with a generational conflict, then a shift in priorities he's identified, 3 really specific and violent case studies, and finally, we'll look at the big theory he uses to tie it all together.
All right, so the first piece of Hanson's argument really zeroes in on what he describes as this bitter fight between the party's old, established leadership and a new, much more radical group that's rising up to challenge them.
Hanson paints this picture of a real showdown. He points to guys like Dick Durbin stepping down and even suggests that someone like Chuck Schumer could face a serious primary challenge from AOC. In his analysis, this isn't just your normal political power struggle. He sees it as an ideological war where the old guard is, and this is his word, terrified of a base that they just can't control anymore.
And that idea of fear, of being terrified, is absolutely central to what Hanson is getting at. He's basically saying this is what's driving everything inside the party right now. It's forcing these established leaders to either get out of the way, like he says Durbin did, or risk getting completely pushed aside by a base that has just moved way past their brand of politics.
Okay, so from there, we move into Hanson's next big point. He argues that this ideological shift isn't just talk, it has real, tangible consequences. He claims a new ideology, one he calls Heartless, is starting to put its big revolutionary goals ahead of the actual safety of everyday people.
So what does he actually mean by heartless leftism? Well, to explain it, Hanson points directly to that infamous line from Stalin about having to break a few eggs to make an omelet. He's arguing that this is a cold, calculating mindset where any harm done to individuals is just seen as acceptable collateral damage, as long as it serves the bigger goal.
And his first piece of evidence for this ideology in action is this number, over 600. That's how many sanctuary jurisdictions he says exist across the United States.
Now, in Hanson's interpretation, what's happening here is that these places are making an active choice not to cooperate with federal immigration enforcement, even when it involves people who have committed other crimes. For him, this is the perfect example of an ideology that puts its opposition to federal border policy above any potential risks to public safety.
His second example? It's all about the backlash to an effort to bring in federal forces to help out the D.C. police during a spike in violent crime.
So the key thing Hanson focuses on here is the response. He points out that this intervention led to 8 straight days with no shootings, which is huge. But, he says, the main political reaction wasn't relief. It was outrage. People were calling the move autocratic. For Hanson, this just shows an ideology that cares more about the political fight than about a positive result for the people living there.
So up to now, it's been a bit abstract, right? Well, this is where Hanson tries to make it very, very real and personal. He uses 3 specific, violent stories that he believes show this heartless ideology in action. His first case study is about a young man, a 19-year-old Treasury employee named Edward Corvisstein during a late-night incident in Washington, D.C.
So here's the story. According to Hanson, Corvisstein sees a female colleague being targeted by a group trying to carjack her. He steps in, helps her get away safely, but then he gets severely beaten himself. And while 2 guys were arrested, Hanson makes a point to say they were released pretty quickly by a local judge. And that, for him, sets the stage for the public reaction.
But for Hanson, the real story here, the thing that he finds so disturbing, is the reaction he says he saw on social media. He uses comments like this one as proof of an ideology that, in his view, just dismisses a victim based on their perceived class or race, basically saying his suffering doesn't count because of who he is.
All right, case number 2. This one involves the murder of Brian Thompson, the CEO of a major healthcare company, who was shot and killed right out in public. Hanson details how the killer, Luigi Magnoni, essentially executed Thompson in public after labeling him an enemy of the people. And Hanson notes that the killer's stated reason was a lack of universal health care, turning a policy debate into, well, a motive for murder.
And here we go again. Hanson's focus is on what happened after the crime. He argues that instead of just universal condemnation, some people on the left actually canonized the killer. He says they even made a play about him, turning him into some kind of folk hero. For Hanson, this isn't just justifying violence, it's actively glorifying it.
And for his third and final example, Hanson talks about Wesley La Patner, a 42-year-old executive and a mother who was killed during a random shooting spree in Manhattan. The way Hanson describes it, this was just a tragic, totally random act of violence. A man, apparently angry at the NFL, goes into an office building. He can't find their headquarters, so he just opens fire in other offices. Wesley La Patner was just an innocent bystander who had absolutely no connection to him or his anger. And for the last time, Hanson points to an alleged social media comment as his final proof. He argues this shows an ideology that instantly reframes the person who did the shooting as a victim from the underclass, while at the same time dehumanizing the actual victim because of her job and her perceived wealth.
So you've got this generational fight, you've got these sanctuary policies, these really horrific crimes, and these disturbing reactions. How does Hanson possibly connect all these dots? Well, he offers one single theory that he thinks explains everything he's seeing.
And this is it. This is the absolute core of his entire argument. He calls it a Stalinistic or Marxist binary. In his analysis, it's a worldview that splits society into two and only two camps. You're either an oppressor or you're oppressed. And he argues that inside that framework, any action, no matter how violent, can be justified as a necessary evil to attack these perceived enemies of the people for some greater revolutionary good.
So in the end, Hanson's entire analysis really boils down to this one big question. Are we just watching a normal political evolution, the kind of change parties go through all the time? Or is it, as he argues, a genuine rupture? A complete breaking apart under the weight of a new, uncompromising ideology that's going to change the Democratic Party forever? That's really the heart of his warning.